Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Kim Andrews to the podcast. We've been working together for 2 years. 2 years, I think.
Yes, almost. I think almost exactly.
So exciting. And just so excited for you to hear about Kim's perspective on a wide variety of things, including lead generation and starting her own podcast and her overall business strategy. So that would be so fun to have Kim on the podcast and for you to hear her background and her experiences and wherever else this conversation goes. So Kim, thank you for being here. Would you like to give yourself a better introduction than what I just gave you?
That was great. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I met you for the first time through your podcast, getting to know you through your podcast. So I always thought, oh gosh, if I ever get to be on the podcast, then I'll know I've really made it. So thank you for having me.
So happy you're here. Tell us a little bit about what you do as a consultant.
Sure. So I am a leadership coach and I work with nonprofit CEOs and their executive teams. Slightly larger, more established nonprofits, so at least $1 million or so in annual revenue. And I help them get out of the weeds. I help them tackle really tricky team issues. And I help them move their missions forward without running everybody into the ground in the meantime. So I have a particular, though not exclusive, focus on nonprofits that are in some way working to advance women's rights and working to support women and girls. So that can span a wide variety of issues and focus areas, but it's where I've really felt drawn the last year or so, and excited to talk about this adventure.
It's so exciting. Give us a little bit of a backstory. How did you get into independent consulting in the first place?
Gosh, I still scratch my head on that a little bit, to be honest. I am an accidental business owner and consultant. I always joke, this was not on my bingo board at all. And it has been the most fun and kind of reinvigorating career surprise. So I spent the first 15 years of my career in K-12 education in a variety of roles. So I started my career through a program called Teach for America. I was a middle school teacher in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas, which actually becoming a teacher was also not on my bingo board at the time. So maybe there's a trend. And that kind of launched me on a career in public education for, like I said, sort of the next 15 years. I worked abroad in the UK for a couple of years at a sister organization to Teach for America called Teach First, and then worked in school districts and education nonprofits. And it was a really fulfilling, meaningful span of my career. I think the common thread in all of those roles was teacher development and teacher leadership. And how do we create learning and leadership experiences for teachers that both positively impact them as professionals and leaders and folks who want to grow and advance in their careers, and also having a positive impact on students and student learning. So I think I was sort of on that path. I was on the path and I was sort of doing the next logical thing on the path for a while, and it was a good path. And I worked with some amazing colleagues and school districts and got to grow and develop my own teams. And then kind of a variety of things happened. I think I reached a point sort of mid-ish career where I sort of looked up from the path and was like, sort of starting to ask some big picture kind of existential questions about what I wanted to do with my career, because for the first time kind of the next step wasn't clear to me. And I
Mm.
or what the obvious next step was not something I wanted. And so that set off kind of a flurry of activity to reflect on, well, what do I want and what don't I want? I felt a lot clearer about what I didn't want. Um, and my family was growing, had a couple of small kids, and we were thinking about a third. COVID was reaching its peak. So there were sort of a bunch of factors that were putting me in this thoughtful, questioning place. Um, and I would say I kind of reached a point where I knew that I was going to have to sort of step out and make a change before that next step was really clear. I thought I would just sort of like figure out the answer, right?
Mm.
While raising these small kids and working this demanding job. And I was like, okay, 2021, I'm just going to like figure it out. And then I'll take that next step in this really linear, easy, safe way. And like and then just became really clear that that was not going to be possible. And I had two really, really big supporters in this. One was my husband, Brooke, who really helped kind of nudge me to make a leap and leave that role before my last role, which was at an ed nonprofit, before I knew it was where we were headed. Uh, and then I also had a longtime mentor, friend, former boss named Jill. She has her own company. She's the CEO and founder of the Schreifer Group up in DC. And she said, "Look, I'll give you a soft place to land while you quote figure it out. My team's growing. I could use some advisory support. I could use some in-house professional development support for my staff who are kind of growing in their own leadership and people management." Um, and it was a bit more of a gut. It was a gut decision. I was not kind of showing up every day in my role, in my prior role, as quote unquote my best self. I I'm naturally very kind of optimistic and enthusiastic, and I bring a lot of energy to problems, and I that was not where I was. I was cynical and cranky, and I knew in my heart of hearts it was time for a bit of a shift. So I thought I would just I thought I would just do some hours for Jill again while I figured
Yeah.
out the next step. And it has grown and evolved and ebbed and flowed from there. And it has been so much fun. Certainly plenty of like, oh shit, can I do this moments? And I've learned they don't really go away. But it was the best decision I could have made.
I think this is so valuable, especially for people who are considering leaving corporate or have just left and are trying to decide, is this the right path for the long term? And what
Uh,
you just shared is so real and so true for so many of us,
yeah.
which I think is some accidental thing happens and it just pushes and reinforces the point that you can't have all of your ducks. There's not a possible way to have all of your ducks in a row and to do this methodically. Sometimes I talk to consultants and they say, well, I've been working to get myself to the place where I can, launch this business for the last 2 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's so hard to imagine what it's like. It's so hard to anticipate, so hard to figure all the things out until you're in it. So you might as well just get in it and figure it out as you go.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if I thought I had to go into this expecting that I was going to become a business owner, I was going
Yeah.
to do this for long term, that I was committing to becoming a consultant and a business owner, I never would have done it, not in a million years.
No way.
So you kind of like you do it into being, right? Like
Right.
there's just no other way. And I think if as somebody who does tend to bring like very analytical, very thinky approach, that analysis sometimes it's about more than that, right? It's not a math problem. And I think
Yeah.
you have to pay attention to where you're feeling pulled
Yeah.
toward or away.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Let's dive in a little bit first of all to your business growth. So, I think it's exciting. I'll be interested to see if you agree with me on this, but from my vantage point, your pipeline is overflowing and you're really good at generating leads and creating conversations and uncovering opportunities with people that you're networked with new people you've met. I would love to hear your experience of this process of building a lead gen approach and strategy and what's worked and what hasn't, and
Yeah,
tell us
sure.
your vantage point.
Well, I love you. One of there have been many instances, Melissa, when you've done this for me, where you make an observation that certainly the facts support, like around my business or its growth or the pipeline, and it on its face, in hindsight, it seems obvious, but I need you to point these things out to
Mm.
me. It's amazingly difficult, I think, to sometimes see the facts on the ground in our own work.
Yeah.
I always know I'm in trouble when you say, okay, well, what are the facts on the ground? I'm like, well, no, I'd rather swim in anxiety. What do you mean? What are the facts? Um, yes, I this part, the business development part of this has also been a surprisingly fun, um, a fun part of it. I think that I'm more sort of entrepreneurial than I realized, and that I enjoy it a lot more than I realized, because at the end of the day, it's about connecting with people, showing really genuine interest in
Mm.
people, which, I often tell the story. My dad forced me when I was 11 or 12 to read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which I
Right.
haven't read in a while. I don't know how it ages all the way to 2025, but the central lesson in that book is if you want somebody to leave a conversation with you thinking you are a great conversationalist, you need to get them to do all the talking.
Mm.
And that is something that I think about a lot, and that I think is really at the center of how I approach meeting people and uncovering opportunities. It's a lot of asking, it's a lot of showing genuine interest in what other people are working on and what they're being challenged by. And I think I've tried a whole variety of things here. And I would say what I've been having the most fun with lately and what's working best is a couple of things. One is trying to get really, really super specific, both in terms of who I want to talk to and meet, and um, and how I am sort of selling, so to speak, those first few conversations, even if they're really genuine kind of get to know you conversations. You still have to, you talk about this a lot, you're still selling it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
people's time. um so for example, I think it's only been pretty recent that I've started to say and experiment with a focus on particular nonprofits, so nonprofits in the women's rights space. And um there's a lot of people talking about niching and niching down and how do you do it and should you do it, and it's scary and will I repel business, but I have found it to create a lot of abundance, actually. And one
Mm.
quick example, Melissa, you asked me a few months ago if you had to come up with a dream list of organizations to work with, who would be on that list? And I was totally stumped in the moment. Like I couldn't come up with a single one in the moment, which is ridiculous. Like there's so many nonprofits doing incredibly interesting, important work just in my hometown. And then fast forward a couple of weeks, and as I've started to play around with this idea of a focus, even though I've narrowed in some ways, and this is a narrowing not in terms of like people from other types of organizations come to me and I'm like, no, I will not work with you, but it's a
Yeah.
narrowing in terms of um, who I seek out locally or how I do some prospecting on LinkedIn. And by creating that focus on a particular type of organization, it's actually been really clarifying and a lot
Mm.
easier to uncover dozens and dozens of organizations that are like, wow, they're doing really interesting things. Or I have found in my casual conversations with people, if I say, oh yeah, I'm a leadership coach for nonprofits, people are sort of like, oh yeah, that sounds nice. If I say I really love working with women's rights organizations, way more often than not, it's like that lodges in somebody's brain
Mm,
differently. And they're like, oh, do you know so and so? Or have you thought about this organization? It just, the specificity of it, I think, opens up a lot of ideas and possibilities. Okay, so that's a long way of saying one element of the lead
yeah.
generation approach that's been really helpful lately is focus. And it hasn't been limiting at all. It's actually opened up, I think, a lot of ideas and possibilities. Um, the other thing that you've really helped me do, well, a couple of things. I think I'm it's pretty easy for me to meet people naturally at in-person events and talk and get to know them a little bit. But in terms of getting ideal clients or people on the phone or on a Zoom or to like a networking conversation, you have helped me get really, and this is on the theme of specificity, get really specific about what would be valuable to them.
Mm,
Not, of course it's valuable to you, but like what do they really need? What's a invitation or a conversation that they're going to really need and they're going to really say, oh, that would be super valuable. um and so right now I'm having a round of conversations with nonprofit CEOs where they bring, it's a 30-minute kind of lightning round problem solving, get unstuck conversation. Like what's costing your team the most energy right now? What's one thing you can kind of decide or get unstuck from before the end of the year? Clear this from your plate before the end of the year. Um, so instead of like, hey, I want to meet so and so, or could you introduce me to somebody? I'd like to have a chat. It's like, no, here's something I'm offering to help that people might find valuable. And that's also taken a lot of testing. Like I've tried a
mm.
few different offers, so to speak. And let's see, I had one other thought. No, maybe it'll come back to me.
It'll come back to you. I think this is so valuable though of putting some structure in your mind around not when you're reaching out to people that you who are you reaching out to? This gives you a clearer lens. Then
Yes.
also what are you saying when you're reaching out to them? It's not kind of a cold pitch of hey, I do this. I see so many consultants are trying to explain what they do and make it sort of make the other person interested by understanding what they do versus what you've done is offer something really valuable that stands out to them that they want to say yes to. And also like you just described, whether it's reaching out to them directly or getting an introduction to them through someone else, it also makes it so tangible.
Yes, and the other thought on that is and again, none of this is like people listening, I'm sure they've heard this a million times, but you got to experience it and trial and error it. I have thought about, okay, if this is my this problem solving conversation, if this is my kind of invitation to a conversation, in addition to making that invitation directly to people, I've thought about, okay, who knows me, likes me, trusts me, who is connected to people
Mm,
who might find this valuable. So there's a great organization
yeah.
locally called, and I'm in South Carolina, called Together SC, and it's a member organization for nonprofits across the state. They do great work networking and professional development and other resources. So, and I have a relationship with the CEO. So I sent it over to her and she sent it to their listserv for CEOs.
Yeah.
So, or just thinking about other people in my world who are connected to folks who might find that valuable. It can feel, I don't want to hide behind it, right? I want to make the offer directly, but it
Hmm.
can also it feels a little safer to be like, hey, do you know if you're having trouble here? If kind of going to a referral or a channel partner and offering it can be another helpful and kind of efficient way to
Yeah,
work.
absolutely. I think it's so helpful for other consultants to hear you to talk about like this is possible to meet brand new decision makers. It's possible to get on the calendar of brand new decision makers in a way that's really related to what you do as a consultant, not sort of broadly meet and greet sort of friend zone situation,
Yes.
this
Yes,
is all very possible. And I love that you've said this a couple times now already, which is you've experimented with different
yes,
ways.
yes,
And certain ways have worked for you in the past, and then they either didn't quite work as much anymore, maybe you weren't as interested in doing them that way, and you just keep thinking about this as an experiment of how do I fill my business development hours in a given week, and being kind of loosely attached to a campaign of sorts.
yes, yes. And I would add on that these conversations have felt, we in our coaching, Melissa, you sometimes will refer to things as clean. These
Mm,
conversations have felt very clean because I am not pitching at all. The
mm,
whole purpose for the call is to dig into a problem that they bring. And so this, it brings a focus, it brings something interesting, a problem to dig into. Um, and sometimes, more often than not, an opportunity kind of arises
mm,
naturally in the conversation. And I've had to practice, you know this, I've had to practice this saying like, oh, like towards the end, that's, I help clients with that. Would you like to have a second conversation? So it keeps the purpose of this initial conversation very clean because it's about solving or working through an issue that the person's having. And if an opportunity comes up, then practicing like directly offering a second conversation, which would have a different purpose.
yeah, yeah.
Um, that's
I love compartmentalizing like that. So
yes.
then you're not kind of wondering, should I bring up what I'm doing? Should I try to sell them something in the middle of this thing?
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
the
no, let's
worst.
just separate it all out.
Yes, that is the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. One of the things that can you think back to a time or mindset shift that, or even a strategy? Let's focus on mindset first. What kind of mindset shift do you think you've had over the course of the last few years that have gotten you to this place of being where your pipeline is overflowing?
Yeah, let's see. I one thing that has helped a lot. Well, I'll work backwards to the mindset. I think the behavior that's helped a lot is volume. Like
Mm,
far more outreach, far more invitations, far more connections. I have learned how to use LinkedIn,
mm,
um, which I came to reluctantly. And I've gone from somebody who like the thought of posting on LinkedIn made me nauseous, to actually kind of enjoying it. But anyway, I remember a time when I was very overthinky about even like
mm.
adding somebody on LinkedIn, let alone like posting a comment. I mean, shudder, right? Like I can't. I think there was maybe you can help me tease out the mindset, but I was afraid to bother people. I was afraid to
Mhm.
come across as, some of the very kind of common to come across as salesy. Frankly, I um, turned quite a bit of a side eye to consultants when I worked in house. So I was thinking, like, from that old perspective, like, what do they want and what are they selling? And so a lot of that was, I've had to kind of rewire a
Mhm.
bit. And um, what has been helpful is one of the mindsets that's been really helpful is, well, a few. I would say being willing, like I'm willing to be uncomfortable. Like
Mm,
I'm willing to just do it anyway, knowing that like the more things become a habit, the more lead generation becomes a habit, it'll feel more comfortable, like building a muscle around it. I think you use this a lot, but the it's possible
mm,
timing, when I come to it with a genuine interest in getting to know somebody's work, and this is where the focus has
mm,
helped too. I have a very genuine interest in women's rights, women's leadership, programs that support women and girls. So it is easy for me to reach out to those leaders and those organizations because it's real, it's true.
yeah.
Um, and so like a mindset around hey, it's possible they would want to hear from me. It's possible that we could make a connection here, and I might build a relationship here. But also just like you got to get your you got to get your reps in. I got to get my reps in. I'm going to
Yeah.
do it. I'm going to keep doing it, and know that it will feel easier over time. And there will be, the next challenges around the road, but I think I used to really overanalyze
Mm.
initial outreach, even to people I knew, even to like a warm contact.
Yeah. If I were to summarize what you just said, I think it's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get the reps in. So we're going to do this regardless of if it's uncomfortable or not. And it's possible they want to hear from me, and it's worth it. It's worth it because of the passion that you feel for this particular niche and what you're doing in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Tell us a little bit, Kim, about one of the things that you brought up a minute ago is speaking. Speaking to organizations that have amassed your ideal clients, and also we'll talk about the podcast that you started here in a minute, also. But tell us about how you leverage speaking. So we've talked a lot about networking, but how do you leverage speaking as one of the ways to fill in your pipeline?
Yeah, this is another, I think, strategy that a few years ago I would have not seen for myself,
Mm,
uh, and now I'm enjoying. And it's a newer area. So let's see. I One of the strategies I'm using, and this is a priority for me, I'd say, to spend some time game planning a strategy for next year, um, is scanning about for conferences where nonprofits are gathering. Um, Also, there are various organizations who convene nonprofits for fund. They offer funding, or they offer webinars, or anyone that sort of has some programming or support for nonprofits. um, I One of my first toe dips in here was with the organization I just mentioned, Together SC. So they have a big conference annually, and it's really, really competitive for consultants. There are not that many spots for consultants, and I've made several attempts and been denied, but I will try every year. And so I have thought, okay, what are some other, their annual conference is just one of it's their big flagship program, but there are others. And so I reached out to the CEO, when she first started, Karen. We had a really nice conversation, and I asked, like, what do leaders that you're interacting with need? Like, what
mm,
do they want? What do they need? Um, and as I was listening to her, I made kind of a very genuine connection to a leadership team health scorecard that I had developed, a quick assessment. And it seemed like a match for a need she was describing. Like, how do leaders really kind of strengthen the health of their teams, especially navigating a very, very difficult policy and funding environment for nonprofits this year? And I just made an offer. I said I would be happy to put together a webinar, because I know they
mm,
have a CEO group. So I mean, this is an example of like the obvious and the biggest sort of opportunity with them is this conference, and that hasn't
mm,
come through yet. But by making a personal connection, by asking genuine questions. And then I had like 30 or so CEOs come on a webinar back in August, and I got to sort of test out a new talk that I'm now tweaking. Um, and I had a shot off a proposal to the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, and that was accepted first try. So I'll be over there
unbelievable.
next week. So I think
Unbelievable.
it's like volume, right? Like, send out a bunch of proposals, but also follow up and be creative. I've by no means figured this out, but I think taking a really kind of trial and error approach, and wherever possible, making like a personal one-on-one connection with folks, and seeing where, asking a lot of questions and seeing where it leads.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, building upon the learnings, right?
Yeah,
Building upon the learnings that this isn't a pass or fail or a rejection, that this is about what can you do to fold in the next proposal or the next way you're approaching an organization.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good. Tell us a little bit about. We're going to get to podcasting. I'm so excited to talk about your podcast. But before we do, one last question around lead generation, which is your time management. So you've got 3 kids, you've got your business, you've got just a lot going on, and so tell us. And like you were saying, it's so important to get the reps in. You've obviously got client work, all of the things you're juggling. So tell us a little bit about how you think about the way you're managing your time and how you're getting the reps in most of the time.
Yeah, I have tried so many different ways of blocking time and tracking, and for me it's always like a little bit of a delicate balance, because on the one hand you have to block off the time, you have to have some structure around
Mm,
it. But on the other hand, one of my kind of Achilles heels here is like over structuring,
mm,
and then I'm like spending too much time color coding and tracking and deciding, like, does this conversation count, does that conversation count? So it's
yeah.
this, like, trying to thread the needle of enough structure without losing sight of the point of the whole thing. And in fact, like, I'm looking at these scrawled notes right now because I just over the weekend, when I couldn't sleep, I revamped how I'm going to do it now. So
Yeah.
I think one of the lessons here is, like, it's okay to, it's a, I've said it 100 times. You try things, you
Yeah.
experiment, and I'll say that 100 times when we talk about the podcast too. The way I'm thinking about it now, I have learned from this lead gen sprint that you're leading, um, that I 30 minutes is plenty of time for me in a
Mm,
conversation, especially these, like, really focused conversations with CEOs. I used to think that every conversation had to be like a 2-hour coffee. I don't know if you remember this. I thought,
yeah.
like, it was sort of rude or something to ask somebody to a conversation without, meeting in person and having this long coffee or meal. And this is, I'm laughing about it now. um I don't know where I got that idea, but that somehow was, like, rude or not appropriate. Like, yeah, but it quickly became clear that, like, I was not going to be able to get sort of the number of touches with folks at that rate, that rate. And so I've learned that 30 minutes, and especially when there's a focused purpose for the call, is plenty of time.
Mm,
I've also learned that I do need a little bit of, like, head switching time after a
mm,
30-minute call, especially with a potential client where, it's a little bit more focused. And I say high stakes. I don't mean that, but it's not just a chit chat with a referral partner. It's something I'm really bringing my A game to, and there'll be follow ups, and
yeah.
I need a little bit of time after. And so I like to have kind of 2 to 3 hour chunks of time for these calls, so that there's a
Mhm.
call and a break. That way the follow up doesn't um, pile up.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to have them in a bit of a block. So if they're sprinkled throughout the day, it's a little hard for me to make a lot of switches from client work to
Mhm.
business development. So that's another kind of hypothesis here, like clustering them, giving myself some break. I mean, this is really in the weeds, but I
Yeah.
think this is where, like, the rubber hits the road,
That's
right?
right.
Um,
That's right.
and then I've made a little kind of checklist for myself of lead generation activities. So some of it is on LinkedIn, some of it's speaker prospecting, some of it's um, reaching out to warm leads to share, this invitation for the CEO calls. But deciding in advance so that I'll have this lead gen block on my calendar, and then I sit down and I'd be like, "Oh God, what does that mean again? Like, what do I do?"
Right.
So I'd have this, like,
Right.
amnesia about, and then suddenly you get sucked into a LinkedIn hole and you're not even sure which end is up. So
Yeah.
having a bit of a checklist to come back to, and not seeing it as a failure when I don't get an A+ on perfectly executing the plan as designed.
Right.
That's something
Right.
that's a work in progress. But I found it kind of fun to change it up when it gets stale, or it feels like I've not implementing it the way it was designed. And, oh, okay, what worked, what didn't, and you've really helped me with that too.
Yeah. Which is reminding me, you were one of the inspirations of the episode about you could do lead gen in 7 minutes, you
Oh
know? It's like
yes. Oh, well, no, actually,
you
I'm glad you reminded me about that,
yes.
because that was a huge realization for me. I if I had too much time for lead gen, then I would my brain would just have a fit and come. It was just more time to come up with excuses for why I shouldn't send this message or reach out to this person. So when I'm squeezing, especially on the outreach front, when I'm squeezing in outreach, for example, to a 15 or 20-minute block between calls, I don't have time to like hem and haw about if this person is going to, you know, thinks I'm reaching out to sell her something. I dash off the invite, I just erring on the side of action. And for me, that means compressing the amount of time available.
Yeah, which I think is on the other hand of this too, is you're not writing off the time. Oh, I only have 7 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. I'll do that later. It's helping you on both ends of that equation, I think. We'll
Definitely.
link that episode in the show notes.
Yes.
That was yes. So good. All right, let's talk about, I can't wait to talk about this. So you have started your own podcast. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about it. I can't wait to hear all the details. It's excellent.
Oh, that's kind. Okay. So our podcast, I have a partner. Her name's Jada Willis. Is called Lead Through It, or I sometimes will say Lead Through Shit. Jada doesn't swear, but it is about it's about how leaders work through hard things, broadly defined. So
Yeah.
we ask when we have guests, and these are business owners. Jada works with a lot of business owners. I work with a lot of kind of organizational leaders. So we ask leaders to share a story from
Mm,
their lead through it moment. It could be anything, a hard decision, hard feedback, like a time when they were struggling. Like, how did they lead through it? What did they learn? What did they try? What didn't work? Um, and this is not the never ever in 1 million years did I imagine myself as a podcast guest, let alone co-hosting a podcast. But it has been so much fun. We're about 12. Well, we've got 10 episodes out currently, a couple in the bank. Um, and we've experimented with a few different approaches. So some we have a guest on.
mhm.
We also will have some episodes where we're kind of debriefing what we heard from the guest.
Mhm.
I love a good inspirational story, and I have a heart for the practical and for the, okay, what are we going to do? Okay,
Mhm.
what should people try? Like, what's the change we're actually going to um, do in the world like as a result of this story or this wisdom. So we have some episodes where we kind of pull a kernel of wisdom from the guest and we offer listeners something to try. So it could be a few questions to reflect on, it could be a quick framework they might try and apply to an issue they're having. And I really love that combination because we learn by doing. So I
Right.
want to kind of inspire people to try something based on what they hear. And then some of it's us just sort of bantering about our insights and learnings. And yeah, it's been a big surprise and a lot of fun.
It's so good. And I think the idea of normalizing that there are problems, there are challenges,
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with you that you're having problems and challenges as a leader. How have other people, there's no right answer for solving them. There's what are you
Yes.
going to test?
Yes.
Just really is such a good extension of your brand, Kim, of being approachable and practical and someone who's really wants to get in the weeds with their and in the trenches with
Yes.
their with her clients to help them solve problems.
Yeah, thank you. I
Yeah.
mean, I think a lot of our clients, Jada and my clients, they're the CEO, they're the executive director. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a really lonely role at times. So I'm hoping that by talking about some of these challenges, there's some normalizing for people, like you just said, and there's I'm not the only one, and here's something that other people are trying, and also our guests are really open about their what they're still, what they're currently trying to work through. So I hope there's some connection there that we can build.
Yeah. Absolutely. How are you thinking about the podcast as a tool within your overall business strategy?
Yeah, that is a good question. That's evolving. I think there already it is. I've noticed a few things. One, it has been and you actually you had an episode. This is very meta. You had a podcast episode about having a podcast earlier this year, which you
Right.
should link. Which um, was part of the impetus here. I think there were a few like
Mm,
winks from the universe, that being one of them. Um, but I think you talked about it in this episode. I have found it to be a really good forcing mechanism for my uh, thought leadership, so to speak. Like, you know, thinking about and sharing my perspective and being kind of visible and valuable to my clients and ideal clients. Like, Jade and I made a commitment, like, we're going to put out an episode weekly. Actually, last week, for extenuating circumstances, we are catching up, but it means, but you make this commitment, you decide you're going to do it, and then you just make it happen. And it's
yeah.
become kind of the foundation of some other pieces. So now, so I find a little less
Mm,
friction around posting on LinkedIn because,
mm,
well, we did the podcast episode, and so I have a natural kind of inspiration of what to write about on LinkedIn. Or I one of these days, and I'm going to be starting a newsletter or some kind of regular email communication
right.
with my email list. So I'll link back that to the podcast. It's been like a good kind of anchor,
Mm,
um, and kind of forcing mechanism there. And then I think, like, when we had our first call, Melissa, I had already decided that uh, that you were a good fit for me because
mm,
I had like listen to hours of your podcast. So I knew what you were about. Like, I got a sense for your approach and your values and your personality and your advice. And so I hope as this grows over time that it will serve that purpose of credibility, of
yeah.
connection with people who get a sense for who I am and what I'm about. And um, then by the time, we connect for the first time live, uh, that some of that trust and alignment is already there. So
Yeah.
um, that's a piece of it. Also, I think the fact that we have guests, I'm excited to leverage that to have folks
Mhm.
on who I might not otherwise be able to access easily, but maybe it might be a win-win for them. In fact, I won't share who, I'm plotting to get sort of a high profile person on there, who just wrote a book, right? So maybe
Love it.
maybe
Yep.
that would be a win for her. And so that's been a fun way to think about how to build natural bridges with with partners, with potential clients. Yeah, so that's the idea.
Yeah, it'll be it is and will continue to be such a foundational piece of your business and ultimately help drive more inbound leads for you so
Yeah,
that so you've got that complement going to the work you've already told us about as you keep your pipeline overflowing.
that's the
Yes.
idea.
Yes, amazing. Tell us a little bit about when you think about, let's go back to business strategy. When you think about your strategy and what you might advise to other consultants when they're wanting to create more predictability and momentum, like you've got in your pipeline.
Hmm. Well, I would say, gosh, it's such a constant work in progress. I would say that getting a little bit of data and reflecting on that data
Mm,
is really helpful. And I need you, Melissa,
yeah.
to help me with that. But I I think that sometimes the facts on the ground are hard to see. And
Mm,
so one insight, for example, I think that one insight I had some number of months ago was that, yes, I was having a good number of calls and a good number of conversations, but when we dug in a little deeper to look at, like, who was I having calls
mm,
and conversations with, it wasn't with a lot of nonprofit CEOs.
mm.
And that doesn't mean that every call with the nonprofit CEO leads to a proposal, but at minimum, it gives me amazing insight into what those leaders need and what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
So I think I think really looking at and analyzing some of the facts on the ground, number of calls, who are they with, some of the conversion, some of
Mm,
that is really,
yeah.
really important to dig into. I think predictability. I mean, I don't know. Predictability is such a funny word. I don't know that I'd say it's all predictable. I think,
Mm,
though, that the belief, like one thing that's really helped is you have helped me see that it's not a math problem where if you do these two things, they're going to directly lead to this much business. But it's about having enough lead generation activities in the
mm,
basket, and then there's a bit of kind of trusting that that's going to be enough,
yeah.
that there can be ease, and there can be belief, and there that all the mindset work that you help people do, like it doesn't have to be about finding the exact right strategy that will guarantee your
Mm,
outcome. That's just not realistic, right? But there
yeah.
is some strategy to like what are good practices, what's going to align with how you want to spend your time, what you feel good at, when it comes to lead generation, and then um, believing in a little bit of like surprise and magic,
Yeah.
not to be too woo about it, but you, I think I have a tendency to kind of the overthinking and the overanalyzing. So like coming back to basics, like these are the things I'm doing. These are the results I'm hoping for. If I'm not getting the results, okay, let's go back to what am I doing? How am I thinking?
Mm,
And making sure it's a combination of the thought work and the strategies. And I would say whenever I talk to other consultants and I ask like what's working for you? What are you doing? What are you trying? People are all over the map. Like I
mm,
really believe that we can define lead generation however we want, and that it's got to be, somebody said to me recently, whatever whatever the lead generation activities are that you can do consistently and feel somewhat motivated to do, and that feel in line with how you naturally like to engage with people, then like listen to that. Like there is
yeah.
not one formula, and you don't have to be on this, that, or the other social media, but it has to be things that you're willing to do consistently. Like what are
Yeah.
those?
Yeah. Or mostly willing to do
Yeah, most.
consistently. Yeah,
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's so important because I always hear, is this the right way? What's
I
the right way? Am I doing enough? All these things that really don't have a true answer to them, only what answer you decide you want to make work.
Totally. And I ask you that. I love it. I'm like, what do I tell me what to do? And I think that another piece of it has been for me trying to disentangle um, like hard work and effort from outcomes. That doesn't mean that you
Mm,
should work hard, but it doesn't mean that like more hours. And I know I talked about volume
yes.
earlier in
Yes.
terms of outreach, but like more grinding, more hustling, more effort often has really diminishing returns. So
Yeah.
when I try to think about like how I'm feeling when I'm doing lead generation, how I want to feel, how can I create a bit of looser,
Mm,
lighter of an
yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
because that's going to allow me to get into a state of flow and do it more effectively
Yeah. And to be more sustainable.
and to be more
Yeah.
sustainable.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
You've touched on coaching a few times, Kim. If you're game for it,
Yeah.
will you share what has been most valuable for you in terms of the work we've done together? What stands out?
Yes. Gosh, so much. So much. Let's see. I think, and you talk about this a lot, but the relationship between how you're thinking and how you're feeling, and then what action or inaction you're taking. I I will often, it's like you get tired, you help me get tired of my own bullshit, right? Because I have
Mm,
to explain. If you ask me a question and I'm answering like what I'm thinking, what I'm worried about, what I'm, hemming and hawing over, and when I say it out loud, you help me see it more clearly, see how a certain way of thinking is getting in my way. Um, and that it feels very empowering to connect the way I'm thinking to the way I'm behaving.
Mm.
It does it. I do strongly believe this kind of work, this sort of thought work, you I will do you don't ever like get an A+ and move on, right? Like, we're humans and our brains are oriented in a certain way for survival, and I think I see this as something I'll always work on, but it's been very empowering the way you help me see that connection and help me think about how I want to be thinking, how I want to be
Mm.
feeling, and then what kind of action that results in. And I think there's a really nice balance between that mindset work and the tactical moves
Mm.
that work for consultants and that are, that we can try.
Yeah. Amazing. It's such an honor to be working with you and to see how far you've progressed and the business has progressed in these last few years. And we've covered so many, I think you've shared so many good practical and mental and experimental strategies here today for the listener. So I want to thank you so much. Is there anything we haven't covered, Kim, that you want to make sure that you share as we're wrapping up?
I think like get a coach, get
Mm.
Melissa, but also just
Oh,
like get a coach, right? I think I am a coach, and I think coaches need coaches, and maybe it's a peer coach, like
yeah.
but we
Yeah.
need other people to help us see things differently. I mean, you say this to me constantly. Well, let's look at this a different way, and I'm like, sure, let's, because how I'm looking at it sucks. So I think um, it can be, I think, a lonely endeavor.
Mm.
It's called independent consulting, for goodness sake. But
Yeah.
I have gotten the most energy and support and fresh ideas
Mm.
when I build my own colleague community, right? And you're a big
Yeah.
part of that. Jada is a big part of that. Like, but I think that connection and community and kind of peer or otherwise coaching is totally invaluable.
Yeah. I know for sure I wouldn't be where I am now without having coaches. I get coached before I coach you. It's like it's like a
It's just
domino effect.
cascade. And it's like when I show up to clients after you, I'm like, okay, this is as good as it gets. Like,
It's so good. Amazing. Well, tell us again, where can the listeners find you? What's your podcast name? We'll put the link in the show notes and wherever else you would like them to come
yes.
looking for you.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. I am pretty active on LinkedIn. So Kim Andrews. My main name's Levengood. So if there are others out there with my same name, Kim Levengood Andrews on LinkedIn, KimAndrewsCoaching.com, and Lead Through It with Kim and Jada, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Love it. Love it. We'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you for coming on today. It's such a valuable set of learnings that you've shared and perspectives. So I'm excited for everyone to hear this episode.
I love talking with you. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.